Hey everyone, in this lecture we're going to be talking about layering. So layering is a type of vegetative propagation, and it's a way of rooting cuttings in which adventitious roots are initiated on a stem while still attached to the plant. This rooted stem is then detached, transplanted, and becomes a separate plant. So this type of propagation was used extensively in the 18th and early 20th centuries in a lot of the nurseries in England. It has declined in popularity with the advent of more modern propagation techniques. However, it is still used, and it's used particularly well for hard to root plants, so plants that may not root well through just cuttings alone. So the important thing about layering is that the propagule, or what's going to become the propagule, maintains a physical attachment to the mother plant while it's growing those adventitious roots. And this is really important because it maintains this intact vascular system, right? And that vascular system, as we've talked about in a lot of these other lectures, consists of the xylem, oops, hit the wrong button, xylem and phloem, and these tissues are transporting water and nutrients, sugars and carbohydrates, as well as hormones. And I should say xylem and phloem, as well as the vascular cambium, which gives rise to new xylem and phloem. Right, so we're maintaining this vascular connection in our what will be our cutting. So, and like I just said, that xylem and phloem tissue, it transports those different materials. That's going to allow those materials, water, sugars, etc., to still be able to flow into this cutting. So as a result, if we're doing layering, it eliminates the water stress and leaching of nutrients that we may see in cuttings. So in cuttings. Right, so normally we would take our cutting, and then our cutting would later form adventitious roots after it's been detached from the mother plant. With layering, it's forming those roots, and while it's forming those roots, it still has this connection. So it's still receiving water, it's still receiving sugars and carbohydrates. So it's able to form these roots. We don't have to worry about the potential loss of water or the leaching of nutrients while this is happening. And then once those roots are formed, we can take that propagule and plant it. So it's a really cool method of propagation. Like we said, it's good for our hard-to-root plants in particular. And what we're going to do is look at a couple different examples or types of layering. Right, so I think we're going to look at 6 different examples that we're going to talk about. So we're going to start with simple layering. And as you see on the image over here, simple layering, the process works where you bend over the side branches of your plant. So I'll write it out as we do it. So you bend the side branches, and you want to pin them down. Right, so as you see what's going on right there, we bend over these side branches and pin them down. You then want to cover portion of the stem near the tip with soil or some sort of medium. And then the idea is that that covered portion, there's going to start to form adventitious roots, and you see them developing right here. So you pin down a side branch, you cover a portion of it near the tip with soil, and then that covered portion starts to form roots. Later on, you'll come back and you're going to cut this, as you see here, and now you have a cutting that already has roots formed, and it's going to be easy to root. So one thing that I didn't mention That probably goes back to that first slide, but for all of these techniques, we generally are going to do our layering. We're going to start this process in springtime. So March through early May. Right, so you would do whatever in all the other types of layering that we're going to see. You would start sometime in March through early May. So you would pin this down at that time, and then depending on the species, it could take several weeks. It could take the entire growing season for these roots to form. So you give it some time. Eventually, once these roots are formed, you can take your cutting. Sometimes that will be, a couple weeks later, maybe in fall, you can then plant your rooted cutting, or you may wait until through the winter and take your cutting and transplant it the next season. Right? So that's going to go for pretty much all of these techniques. You're going to start in the early spring. It's going to take a little bit. You may wind up transplanting your cutting later on in the fall, or you're going to wait until the following year. Okay, so that's simple layering. Really easy, right? You're bending down a branch, you're burying part of it, and you're waiting for roots to grow. Now, all these types of layering, especially these beginning ones, are kind of variations on that same theme. Right? So if we look at compound layering, same idea. We're burying a branch, but in this case, we are in compound layering. We are burying the entire branch down. So instead of just burying a tip or a portion of this, like with simple layering, where it would be something more like this, and this would be the tip of the branch. In compound layering, the entire branch is getting buried. Right, and forgot it would do that. All right, well, pretend that's just normal. So in compound layering, entire branch is bent horizontally and buried. Now, what happens here is the same general idea. So along that branch, there are going to be, at nodes, at buds, we are going to have the development of both new adventitious roots and shoots, right? And as you see them there. So that's going to be along our stem now. We're going to have these new roots growing, new stems. And eventually, when the time comes, we can take these as cuttings, right? So we can cut here and here. And now we have a new propagule that we can plant. Very easy idea. Serpentine layering is a variation of that, except we are burying this branch in this serpentine-like pattern. So the entire branch we're not burying the entire branch, we're looping it in and out. This is better, as you would guess, for your more viney species. Right, so if we have a viney species where the branch is a little more flexible, we could do some serpentine layering, such like that. Okay, so that's compound and serpentine layering. Let's move on. All right, so air layering, another type of layering. Here we are going to start the formation of our adventitious roots on an aerial stem. So we're not burying any of these stems in the soil. We're going to form these roots on a stem that is normally exposed to the air. So this process begins with girdling the stem. So when we're girdling the stem, we are removing the bark and the inner portion of that is the phloem to expose vascular cambium, and xylem is interior to that, and some pith tissue as well. So we girdle the stem. So we make a cut. Typically, you're gonna girdle like a ½ inch to an inch. So here is our stem, right? We're gonna make a cut here. We're gonna go up, we'll say 1 inch. We're gonna make another cut around here, and you would make this an encircling cut. And then we're gonna remove the bark from this 1 inch. Right there. So now what you'll have is something that looks like this. Right, so our bark has been removed and the phloem, and right here this is just exposed cambium, vascular cambium and xylem tissue. The next step, as you see in the figure, is that you want to wrap this area with some sort of water holding material. Typically you're going to use a type of sphagnum moss. Again, that sphagnum moss has great water holding potential. So you get it moist, and then you wrap it around this area. And then to keep it where it is, you're going to wrap that in some sort of plastic material. So it can be as simple as saran wrap that you would wrap this in. Keep that tight, and that's going to it's going to hold the moisture in. In very humid environments, you don't need to add the poly material because it's humid. You don't have to worry about water loss. So wrapping it in plastic is to keep the moisture in. And then you may also add an additional material such as tin foil or aluminum foil. You can wrap that again, and that's going to help keep the heat down. Okay, so here you see me, and I'm going to be air layering a stem of this blueberry plant. The first step, as we just learned, is to girdle the stem. So I'm going to make a circular cut at one part of the stem, and then I'm going to move up about ½ an inch to an inch, and I'm going to make another circular cut. And we're going to fast forward that a bit. Right, see me there making the cuts. And then the next step is to actually remove the bark, which is going to includes the outer bark and the phloem and the cambium tissue. I made that mistake when I said it in the lecture, but I added that stuff there. You want to remove that cambium because you don't want that cambium reproducing new tissues and essentially healing the stem. So you want that cambium removed so it's just xylem tissue that is left. So I'm removing that from the stem, and then we're going to zoom up, and there you go. There's our girdled stem section. The next step is to actually wrap that stem up now with some sort of media. So like I said in the lecture, you ideally want to use some sphagnum moss. I didn't have that available, but I have some potting mix, so I'm going to try that and see how that works. So there's the mix right there. You want it nice and moist, not overly wet. And then you take that and you apply it to the cut stem. Right, so you want to make sure your cut stem section is completely covered. You wrap the plastic wrap around. See there, we speed it up a bit. You want to try and tuck it in a little bit along the edges to make sure it's secure. And again, you want it all the way around. And then what you can do is add some tape to either side. So I'm using the parafilm tape right there. You can use little zip ties. The tape worked just fine. And then the last step in this process is you're going to add some aluminum foil to help reduce heat. Right? You don't want it to get too hot. That plastic can trap a lot of heat energy. So by adding the tin foil, the aluminum foil, it's going to help dissipate that heat. Now, I did read somewhere that this could be an issue with birds, but we'll see. Voila. Okay, so now we're going to move on to mound or stool layering. This is a really neat way to get a whole bunch of propagules from a single plant. So in this idea is you plant your mother plant and you let it grow for one season. Mother plant grows for 1 season. At the start of the next season, you cut the mother plant to be 1 inch above soil. Right, so you see that growing right here. It grew for a season. At the start of the next season, we're cutting it right there. Then you from that cut, we're going to have new shoots that start developing. So as those shoots get to anywhere between 1 to 5 inches high, say new shoots, 1 to 5 inches high, you pile along them, you pile up to the side of them sawdust. Right, and you add that to about half their height. So add sawdust to half their height. As you can see here, right, we're pile that up to about half their height. What's going to happen is we're going to have the formation of new adventitious roots where they got covered up. So where those stems get covered up. So you can kind of see it there, but you have our plant here with all our roots, right? And it's growing out up here. And they're growing normally. And then we pile up this sawdust. And where these stems get covered, they start forming new roots. So now you let that grow for a while, and at the end of the growing season, you can dig these up and take these as individual cuttings that you can then plant. Right. So kind of cool process. Again, another type of layering. Let's move on. Trench layering is, again, different type of layering. Here you're going to start your plants off at an angle, as you see right up here. Right? You start your plants off at an angle, you let them grow for a year, just like with your mound stool layering. At the next year, at the end of that year's growth, you're going to take your plant and you're going to pin it horizontally right there. You dig a little trench and you pin it down, as you see there, and then you're going to cover the plant with soil or sawdust, particularly sawdust. Right, so now we're covered in sawdust. And then what's going to happen is from the latent buds that are present in the stem, we're going to have new shoots that start developing and new adventitious roots that are growing down. And at the end of this growing season, you can take these all as cuttings. So down here, this is a type of pine that they did that with. They laid the pine down in a trench, and we have all these new shoots that are developing, and down here they are rooted. And now we can take these as individual propagules and plant them. Trench layering. Last thing we're going to look at is drop layering. Now, drop layering is a combination of mound or stool layering that we looked at and crown division. So crown, when I talk about crown, that is the region really where the roots meet the stem. I must say stem, bunch of stems here. So right here, this spot right here is the crown. So in the next lecture, when we look at just natural ways of propagation, there is something called crown division. I use it when we do beach grass planting. So beach grass is a type of grass where you can propagate it by crown division. So if we were doing that, you just split this area right here, and you'd split it in two, and then you have two new plants, right? We divided it by the crown. Because they often have multiple shoots coming up from this area with the roots. So with drop layering, you're essentially doing mound or stool layering, like you see here, that you saw in the 2 slides ago. But at the end of this process, so at end of process, you divide the plant through crown division. Right? So this is what's going on. You would do your typical mound or stool layering, and then at the way end of the season, instead of just taking these as cuttings, right, and planting them, you're going to divide this entire plant up through crown division, and then you'll have your separate cuttings from there. Now, it also refers to actually what you're seeing in this image, which is doing this type of layering in containers. So you would start in one container down here, and then you would add a bottomless container to the top of it in which you've added your medium or soil or sawdust, and have it grow from there. So it kind of refers to two things. The one is the process that I talked about where mound layering and then crown division, or growing in a container and propagating that way. Set trap layering. Okay, so that's it with layering. Just wanted to show you some different examples, some different types. And then stay tuned. We got natural propagation structures next, and that'll be that.